This is the formal red notice. We expect the issue to be resolved within 48 hours, or the fines will begin.
The red notice was already taped to my front door when I came home from my night shift, and before I even read the first line, I knew Patricia Langford had made sure the whole neighborhood could see it. It was not tucked into my mailbox. It was not mailed like a normal HOA letter. It was slapped right in the center of the door at eye level, printed in bold letters, with the words "Final Enforcement Warning" across the top. I was still wearing my hospital maintenance uniform, my hands smelled like disinfectant and machine oil, and all I wanted was a shower and 4 hours of sleep. Instead, I stood on my porch at 7:18 in the morning, reading that my HOA claimed I owed $27,000 in fines, late fees, administrative charges, and legal costs. According to the notice, if I did not pay within 10 days, the board would begin the process of placing a lien against my home. The house my mother had worked 2 jobs to keep. The house she had left to me after cancer took everything else from her. The house where her rose bushes still grew along the front walkway. I looked up from the paper and saw Patricia standing at the end of my driveway with 2 board members and a man in a gray suit I had never met. She did not look embarrassed. She looked satisfied. A few neighbors had already opened their blinds. Someone across the street slowed their car just enough to stare. Patricia had been building toward this for months. First, she said my garage door color no longer matched the updated community palette. Then my old pickup was labeled a commercial vehicle, even though it was the same truck I had driven to work for years. Then came notices about my mailbox, my porch light, the small crack in my driveway, and the wooden fence my mother had installed long before Patricia ever moved into the neighborhood. Every violation came with a fine. Every fine came with another fee. Every question I asked was answered with the same phrase. The 2016 amended community covenant gave the board full authority. That morning, Patricia did not need to raise her voice. The paper on my door was loud enough. The message was clear. Pay what they demanded. Sell the house, or let the HOA bury me under legal pressure until I had no choice but to leave. Then I noticed one small line near the bottom of the notice. It referenced the 2016 amendment again, the document Patricia had treated like a weapon for years. But I had never signed that amendment, and neither had my mother. At the time, I did not understand how important that detail was. I only knew something felt wrong. But 2 weeks later, my attorney would find the clause Patricia had spent years keeping out of sight, and that hidden paragraph would turn her final warning into the beginning of her downfall. My name is David Miller, and before Patricia Langford decided I did not belong in my own neighborhood, I had spent most of my adult life trying not to be noticed. I was 46 years old, worked overnight maintenance at St. Mark's Medical Center, and lived alone in a pale blue house at the end of Maple Hollow Lane. I was not rich, not political, not the type of man who enjoyed meetings, complaints, or arguments over mailbox colors. I paid my bills, fixed what broke, cut my grass on Sundays, and kept to myself. That house was not impressive by the standards Patricia cared about. It did not have stone columns, a perfect designer lawn, or a 3-car garage with decorative lanterns. It had old siding, a narrow front porch, a cracked concrete driveway, and rose bushes that leaned too far toward the walkway every spring. But to me, it was the most valuable place on earth, because my mother had saved it with her own hands. She bought the house after my parents split up, back when this neighborhood was still quiet and unfinished, before the HOA became obsessed with uniform paint colors and architectural approvals. She worked at a grocery store during the day and cleaned offices at night. Sometimes I would wake up as a kid and hear her coming in after midnight, trying not to make noise as she set her keys on the kitchen counter. She was exhausted most of the time, but she never let the house go. Every payment mattered. Every repair mattered. Every little improvement was something she earned twice over. The front porch was where she drank coffee before work. The kitchen window was where she watched me ride my bike in circles until the streetlights came on. The fence in the backyard was the one she had saved for almost 2 years to install, because she wanted privacy and a safe place for our old dog. Those rose bushes along the walkway were hers. She planted them after her first cancer treatment, saying that if she had to fight something ugly, she wanted to come home to something beautiful. After she passed, selling the house felt impossible. People told me it was just property, just equity, just a smart financial decision waiting to happen. But they did not see what I saw when I turned the key in the lock. They did not hear her voice in the kitchen or remember her sitting on the porch steps with garden gloves in her lap. That house was the last place where I still felt like someone had fought to keep a roof over me. At first, the HOA had been annoying but manageable. A reminder about trash cans, a notice about weeds, a small fee increase every year. Then Patricia became president, and the neighborhood changed almost overnight. She spoke constantly about standards, image, modernization, and protecting property values. Under her, the board started acting less like a group of neighbors and more like a private inspection agency. The newer homes loved her because she made the neighborhood look polished. The older homes feared her because every original feature became a target. She wanted matching mailboxes, approved lighting, updated fencing, hidden vehicles, fresh paint, and landscaping that looked like it came from the same brochure. My house, one of the original lots, did not fit her picture. The pressure started softly. At a board meeting, she mentioned that older properties sometimes held communities back. A month later, she told me there were buyers interested in homes near the undeveloped land behind Maple Hollow. Then she said a developer had exciting plans that could raise values for everyone, if certain homeowners were willing to be realistic. I knew what she meant. My lot sat near the corner the developer needed. Without my house, their project looked cleaner. With my house still there, the block stayed broken up, inconvenient, and less profitable. I told her I was not selling. After that, everything about my home became a violation. If you have ever dealt with someone who hides control behind words like community standards, you know how quickly it wears you down. One notice becomes 3. One fine becomes a threat. One board member with a title starts making you feel like you are only allowed to stay in your home if you keep earning their permission. Share your thoughts if you have seen that happen, because sometimes the people who stay quiet are not guilty. They are just tired. That was exactly what Patricia counted on. She thought I would get tired. She thought I would get scared. She thought the house my mother had protected for decades would become too expensive for me to defend. What she did not know was that my mother had kept every important document she ever signed. The first violation after I refused to sell was my garage door. Not the condition of it, not damage, not peeling paint, just the color. Patricia's notice claimed the soft gray door my mother had installed 15 years earlier no longer complied with the updated community palette adopted under the 2016 amended community covenant. The fine was $150, with 10 days to correct it and a warning that repeated violations could result in additional enforcement costs. I thought it was ridiculous, but I did not panic. I emailed the management company and explained that the door had been there for years without complaint. I asked for the original rule, the amendment history, and proof that my lot was subject to the 2016 standards. The reply came 3 days later, not from the management company, but from Patricia herself. She wrote that all homeowners were expected to comply with current community standards and that refusal would be treated as intentional non-compliance. That was when the pattern began. The next notice said my pickup truck violated the rule against commercial vehicles, even though it had no company logo, no ladder rack, and no equipment mounted to it. It was just an old white pickup I used to drive to work at the hospital. Then came a warning about my mailbox because it did not match the new approved model. Then my porch light was called outdated. Then my fence was described as inconsistent with neighborhood aesthetics. Then the small crack in my driveway became a safety concern. Every notice carried a fine. Every fine carried a processing fee. Every processing fee created another balance. Within a month, $150 had turned into more than $3,000. By the second month, they were adding legal review charges for letters I had never asked their lawyer to write. I kept responding calmly. I asked for hearings. I asked for proof. I asked for the full recorded covenants, not just the rewritten rulebook Patricia kept sending. But every time I requested documents, the HOA sent the same polished packet with the same missing history. The 2016 amendment was always there. The older pages were not. The signature pages were incomplete. The exhibits were blurred or cut off. And when I asked for the full set, Patricia said the board was not obligated to entertain delay tactics from a homeowner already in violation. The first public humiliation came at an HOA meeting in the clubhouse. I had just finished a 12-hour shift and almost skipped it, but the latest notice said, failure to appear could be considered refusal to cure. So I sat in the back with a folder in my lap while Patricia stood at the front of the room and described my home without using my name at first. She talked about one property holding back the appearance of the entire street. She said older homes needed to modernize or make room for families willing to invest in the community. Then she looked directly at me, and everyone knew exactly whose house she meant. I tried to present my documents. She cut the issue down to a simple story before anyone could see them. In her version, I was not a son trying to protect his mother's house. I was a stubborn owner refusing basic standards that every decent neighbor had already accepted. She said the board had been patient. She said my continued resistance was unfair to surrounding homeowners. She said the association could not allow one outdated property to damage values for everyone else. People shifted in their seats. Some looked uncomfortable. Others stared at me like I was the reason their home prices were in danger. That was Patricia's talent. She could turn private pressure into public shame and make the room feel like her courtroom. After that meeting, the fines accelerated. I received a notice claiming my trash bins had been visible from the street for 23 minutes past the allowed window. Another claimed my rose bushes were overgrown and obstructing uniform curb appeal. Another said the wooden fence my mother had installed needed full replacement under architectural guidelines. The largest fine came when Patricia reclassified the entire front of my house as being in long-term exterior noncompliance, stacking multiple violations into one enforcement action. By the time the balance passed $10,000, I understood the point was not correction, it was pressure. Then the developer appeared. A sign went up near the vacant land behind Maple Hollow Lane, announcing a preliminary review for luxury townhomes. A week later, I found a business card tucked into my storm door from a real estate acquisition company. The note on the back said they were prepared to make a fast cash offer for my property in its current condition. I threw it on the kitchen table and tried to ignore the cold feeling in my stomach. The next morning, my neighbor Mr. Alvarez stopped me while I was bringing in the trash cans. He had lived 3 houses down for almost 30 years and knew more about the neighborhood than anyone on the board. He told me quietly that people connected to the developer had been asking about my lot for months. He said Patricia had mentioned during a committee conversation that my house was the only thing preventing a clean redevelopment plan along the back corner. Then he lowered his voice and said she had joked that once the fines got high enough, I would become realistic. That word stayed with me. Realistic. To Patricia, realistic meant giving up. It meant selling the house my mother had protected because the cost of staying became too frightening. It meant letting a board president turn rules into a weapon and then calling it community improvement. A few days later, the official lien warning arrived. The amount had climbed to $27,000 after attorney fees, late charges, and enforcement costs. The letter said the HOA reserved the right to record a lien and pursue collection if I did not pay in full or enter a board-approved resolution plan. Attached to the back was another card from the same real estate acquisition company. It was not on HOA letterhead, but it was inside the same envelope. That was the moment I stopped believing any of this was accidental. Patricia came to my door the following Monday, with 2 board members standing behind her like witnesses. She told me the situation had become unfortunate, that the association could not ignore serious violations, and that selling might be the cleanest way to avoid further embarrassment. She presented it as concern, but her eyes were sharp. She was not trying to help me leave with dignity. She was trying to make me feel trapped enough to surrender. I did not argue with her on the porch. I did not give her the reaction she wanted. I took the notice, kept the envelope, photographed the business card, and wrote down the time she arrived. When she left, I went inside, sat at my mother's old kitchen table, and opened the plastic storage bin where she had kept tax records, warranty papers, insurance documents, and every important piece of paper from the day she bought the house. For hours, I sorted through yellowing folders while the house sat quiet around me. I found old mortgage letters, repair receipts, property tax records, and the original purchase documents from before the HOA became what Patricia had turned it into. Near the bottom of the bin was a folder labeled subdivision papers in my mother's handwriting. Inside was a faded copy of the original deed restrictions. Most of the language was dense and hard to follow, but one page had been marked with a paperclip. My mother had underlined a phrase in blue ink years before I ever knew I would need it. Original owner exemption. I did not understand the full meaning yet. I only knew Patricia had never once mentioned those words. Not in the notices, not in the meetings, not in the rule book, not while standing on my porch telling me I should sell before things got worse. And for the first time, I wondered whether the rules she had used to bury me were never supposed to apply to my house at all. I did not sleep after finding those 3 words in my mother's folder. Original owner exemption. They sat on the page like a door I had walked past for years without knowing it could open. I read the paragraph under it again and again, but the legal language was dense, written in the kind of careful wording that made every sentence feel like a trap. I was tired from my night shift, angry enough to shake, and still scared of what $27,000 in HOA fines could do to the house. But underneath all of that, something had changed. For the first time in months, Patricia's version of the story did not feel solid. I did not call her. I did not email the board. I did not post anything online or tell the neighbors I had found something. Patricia wanted me emotional, defensive, and sloppy. She had built her pressure campaign around the idea that I would either explode or give up. So I forced myself to do neither. I made coffee, cleared the kitchen table, and started organizing everything. Every violation notice went into one stack. Every envelope with a postmark went into another. I printed every email from Patricia and the management company. I saved screenshots from the HOA portal showing the balance, the late fees, the legal charges, and the dates they were added. I photographed the business card from the real estate acquisition company that had somehow ended up inside the same envelope as the lien warning. Then I created a timeline starting with the first garage door notice and ending with Patricia standing on my porch, telling me selling might be the cleanest solution. By sunrise, my mother's kitchen table looked like a legal office run by a very tired man with no legal training. The next morning, I drove to the county recorder's office. I had been there once years earlier to file a copy of my mother's death certificate after the title transferred to me, but I had never searched old subdivision records before. I gave the clerk my parcel number, the subdivision name, and the year my mother bought the house. Then I asked for every recorded covenant, restriction, amendment, exhibit, and signature page connected to my lot. The clerk brought back more than Patricia had ever sent me. There was the original declaration from the early years of the subdivision. There were maintenance agreements for road costs and shared drainage. There were architectural guidelines from later phases. There was the 2016 amendment Patricia kept using like a hammer. And there were exhibits I had never seen before, including pages that were missing from the packet the HOA had repeatedly sent me. I paid for certified copies of everything. Sitting in my truck outside the county building, I compared the official records to the HOA packet on my phone. The difference was obvious even to me. The version Patricia sent was cleaner, shorter, and convenient. The county version had older pages, lot schedules, exception language, and signature references. My lot, Lot 7, appeared in the original section of the subdivision, not the newer phase Patricia usually talked about at meetings. That afternoon, I searched my mother's storage bin again. This time I was not just looking for memories, I was looking for proof. I found her purchase contract, her original title policy, an old letter from the developer, and a faded welcome packet from the subdivision before the HOA became aggressive. In the back of that packet was a page explaining that certain original lots were subject only to limited maintenance obligations unless the owner separately agreed to expanded architectural controls. My mother had circled the word separately. That was enough for me to call an attorney. Her name was Rachel Carter, and she specialized in real estate and HOA disputes. I expected the consultation to feel intimidating, but Rachel did not talk down to me. She asked for the deed, the notices, the 2016 amendment, the certified county records, the HOA rulebook, the lien warning, the business card, and every email where Patricia claimed all homeowners were bound by the updated standards. I gave her everything. Rachel did not promise me victory. She did something better. She started checking the documents line by line. She compared the legal description in my deed to the lot schedule in the original declaration. She looked at the amendment language, then flipped to the signature pages. She asked whether my mother had ever signed an opt-in form for the 2016 architectural restrictions. I told her I had never seen one. She asked whether I had signed anything after inheriting the house. I told her no. Then she became very still. She showed me that the amendment did not automatically apply the new architectural rules to every original lot. It required separate written consent from certain owners. Lot 7 was listed among those original lots. My mother's name was not on the consent list. Mine was not there either. The more Rachel read, the clearer it became that Patricia had been treating my house like it belonged under rules that the recorded documents did not actually impose. Rachel told me not to contact the HOA directly anymore. From that point on, everything went through her office. She sent a formal records request to the HOA and management company asking for the complete CC&Rs. All amendments, all exhibits, all signature pages, all board meeting minutes related to the 2016 rule changes, and every document supporting the fines against my property. She also demanded proof that Lot 7 had ever been legally subjected to the amended architectural standards. Patricia did not answer quickly. When she finally responded through the management company, the production was incomplete. Several pages were missing. Some exhibits were duplicated. The signature packet skipped from Lot 6 to Lot 13. The board minutes from 2016 were summarized instead of provided in full. Rachel sent a second request, firmer than the first, warning them to preserve all records and stop enforcement until they could establish legal authority. That was when Patricia made her first real mistake. In a rushed response, the management company forwarded an old scanned PDF labeled Archive Amendment Package. It looked like something pulled from a forgotten digital folder, crooked pages, faded text, handwritten notes in the margins. Patricia probably thought it was harmless, because most people would not read past the first few pages. Rachel read every page. Near the back, partly obscured by a bad scan, was an exhibit titled Original Lot Exemptions. Under it, in small print, was the sentence that made Rachel pick up a red pen and circle the screen. Lots 1 through 12 exempt unless separately executed. Lot 7 was mine. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. I thought about every notice, every fine, every public insult, every warning that I was dragging down the neighborhood. I thought about Patricia standing on my porch with that calm, satisfied look, telling me selling might be best. And then I thought about my mother, circling the words separately years earlier like she had known someone might one day try to erase it. Rachel leaned back and told me this was no longer just about whether my garage door was the wrong color. If the clause meant what it appeared to mean, then Patricia had been fining me under rules she could not legally enforce against my property. And if she knew about that exemption while pressuring me to sell, then the board had a much bigger problem than an unpaid balance. For the first time, the $27,000 did not feel like a mountain over my head. It felt like evidence. Rachel did not let me celebrate when she found the exemption clause. She told me the words on the page were powerful, but power in a property dispute came from proving the chain around them. One sentence could change everything, only if it connected cleanly to my deed, my lot number, the recorded amendment, the missing signatures, and every fine Patricia had used to push me toward selling. So for the next several days, Rachel built the case like she was stacking bricks. She started with my deed, which identified my property as Lot 7 in the original phase of the subdivision. Then she matched Lot 7 to the county recorded declaration, the original restrictions, and the schedule of exempt lots. Lots 1 through 12 were not automatically bound by later architectural amendments unless the owner separately executed written consent. My mother had never signed that consent. After I inherited the home, I had never signed it either. That meant the 2016 rules Patricia kept quoting did not apply to the things she had fined me for. Not the garage door color, not the mailbox model, not the porch light, not the fence style, not the driveway appearance, not the so-called modernization standards she used to make my mother's house look like a violation on paper. The fines were not just aggressive. They were built on the wrong authority. Rachel explained that an HOA could have real powers, but those powers had to come from recorded governing documents, not from a president's preference, not from a redesigned rulebook, and not from a missing page packet sent to homeowners who did not know what had been left out. If the recorded CC&Rs carved out an exemption for my lot, the board could not erase that exemption by pretending the amendment applied to everyone. Then she looked at the lien warning. That was where Patricia's situation became much worse. The letter on my door claimed the HOA could place a lien on my home if I did not pay the $27,000. But Rachel found that under the governing documents, the association's lien authority was tied mainly to unpaid assessments and properly authorized charges. The balance Patricia created was made almost entirely of disputed architectural fines, late fees attached to those fines, and legal costs generated by enforcing rules that may never have applied to Lot 7. In simple terms, the HOA was threatening my title over charges it could not prove were valid. Rachel called that dangerous for them. She drafted a demand letter that was sharper than anything I had ever written in my life. It stated that Lot 7 was exempt from the 2016 architectural amendment unless separately executed by the owner, that no such execution existed, that my mother was absent from the consent records, and that I had never agreed to opt in. It demanded immediate cancellation of all fines connected to the 2016 standards, withdrawal of all lien threats, correction of my account balance, reimbursement for costs caused by wrongful enforcement, and preservation of all records tied to Patricia's communications about my property. The letter also demanded the complete, unedited CC&Rs package be provided to every board member, because Rachel suspected something Patricia did not want them to see. At first, Patricia tried to answer through confidence. She claimed the association had always operated under the understanding that all homes were bound by the same modern standards. She said uniform enforcement was necessary to protect values. She described my position as an attempt to exploit outdated language, but her response had one major problem. She did not attach a signed consent form from my mother. She did not attach one from me. She did not attach any county-recorded document overriding the exemption. Rachel replied with certified copies from the recorder's office and a highlighted comparison between the full county version and the incomplete packet the HOA had sent me. The missing pages were not random. They were the pages that showed original lot exemptions, consent requirements, and the limited scope of the 2016 amendment. The more I looked at it, the more obvious it became. The rulebook Patricia had used against me was not just simplified, it was selectively incomplete. Then Rachel found the document that made the room feel colder. In the old board minutes from 2016, there was a note from the management company warning the board that some original lots might not be enforceable under the new architectural standards without owner opt-in signatures. The note specifically referenced lots 1 through 12. It advised the board to verify consent before issuing fines under the amendment. Patricia had been present at that meeting. Her name was listed in the attendance section, not as president yet, but as a committee member involved in architectural review. Years before she stood on my porch and acted like the rules were unquestionable, she had been in the room when someone warned the board that homes like mine might be exempt. That discovery changed the entire story. Before that, the HOA could claim confusion. They could say the documents were old, the records were messy, and the board had misunderstood its authority. But if Patricia knew about the exemption risk and still spent months stacking fines against my house, humiliating me at meetings, threatening a lien, and pushing me toward a real estate company connected to a developer, then this was no longer just sloppy enforcement. It looked deliberate. Rachel sent one more letter, this time to the HOA's legal counsel, not Patricia. It included the exemption clause, the missing signature records, the lien warning, the incomplete packets, the 2016 board minutes, the developer business card, and a timeline showing how the fines increased after I refused to sell. She warned that continued enforcement could expose the association to claims for wrongful enforcement, misrepresentation, abuse of authority, interference with property rights, and potential damages tied to an attempted forced sale. After that, Patricia went silent. The management company suddenly stopped answering through her email address. The HOA's attorney requested time to review the documents. 2 board members asked for copies of the full county records. The balance on my online account disappeared for maintenance, then came back marked under legal review. For the first time in months, no new violation notice arrived. I sat at my kitchen table with the certified records spread in front of me, and finally understood what my mother had protected. She had not just saved a house, she had saved the paperwork that proved nobody could quietly rewrite its legal rights after she was gone. Patricia had tried to force me out with rules she knew might not apply, and now the hidden clause she buried for years was about to pull the entire HOA board into the light. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday evening in the clubhouse, the same room where Patricia had once made me feel like I was the one damaging the neighborhood. This time, I did not walk in alone with a tired face and a folder I barely understood. I walked in beside Rachel Carter, carrying certified county records, printed timelines, marked exhibits, and every notice Patricia had used to turn my mother's house into a financial trap. Patricia was already seated at the front table when we arrived. She wore the same calm expression she used whenever she wanted the room to believe she was in control. Beside her sat 2 board members, a representative from the management company and the HOA's attorney, who looked like he had spent the last several days reading documents he wished had never existed. The hearing began like Patricia still thought she could manage the story. The violation history was summarized first: garage door color, vehicle classification, mailbox standards, fence appearance, driveway condition, exterior modernization. It all sounded official when listed in a flat voice, but Rachel let them speak without interruption. She waited until the board president finished describing me as a homeowner who had failed to cure repeated violations under the 2016 amended community covenant. Then Rachel opened the county-certified copy of the original declaration. The mood shifted slowly at first. She identified my property as Lot 7, one of the original lots in the subdivision. She showed the exemption schedule. She showed the amendment language requiring separate execution before certain original lots could be bound by the 2016 architectural restrictions. She showed the signature records. My mother's name was not there. My name was not there. No opt-in agreement existed. Patricia tried to keep her face still, but one of the board members leaned forward and asked why he had never seen that page before. Rachel did not answer with emotion. She placed the incomplete HOA packet beside the full county version and showed exactly which pages had been missing from the materials sent to me. The missing pages were not decorative. They were the pages that protected Lot 7. They were the pages that explained why the rules Patricia had used against me could not simply be assumed. They were the pages that should have been reviewed before a single fine was issued. Then Rachel presented the lien warning. The room became quieter when she explained that the $27,000 was not unpaid dues or regular assessments. It was a stacked balance of disputed architectural fines, late fees, administrative charges, and legal costs tied to rules the HOA had not proven it could enforce against my home. If the board had recorded a lien based on that balance, it would not have been a routine collection matter. It would have been an attempt to cloud the title of a home using charges that may have been legally invalid. The HOA attorney asked for a pause. Patricia did not want one. I could see it in the way she held her pen, the way her jaw tightened, the way she looked at the management company representative as if expecting backup. But the attorney was no longer following her lead. He asked to review the exhibits privately with the board. Rachel agreed, but only after making sure the record reflected every document she had submitted. While they stepped aside, people in the room began whispering. I noticed faces I had not seen at meetings in years. Older homeowners from the original section of Maple Hollow had come because word had spread that my case involved exemptions. Some of them looked worried. Some looked angry. I heard one man say his wife had paid thousands over window replacements after being told the 2016 rules applied to everyone. Another woman said Patricia had threatened her with fines over a fence style that had existed since before the HOA changed its rulebook. When the hearing resumed, the HOA attorney's tone had changed completely. He recommended that all enforcement against my property be suspended pending outside legal review. He advised the board not to record any lien, not to pursue collection, and not to communicate with me directly about violations covered by the disputed amendment. The management company representative stated that their office had processed notices based on instructions from the board president and would need to audit the file. That sentence landed hard. For months, Patricia had spoken as if the HOA, the management company, and the rules were all one solid wall standing behind her. Now that wall had cracks. The management company was separating itself from her decisions. The attorney was protecting the association from her. The board members were looking at documents they had apparently never been given in full. Then Rachel introduced the old 2016 board minutes. She pointed to the note warning that lots 1 through 12 might be exempt without owner consent. She pointed to Patricia's name in the attendance list. Nobody had to accuse her loudly. The paper did it by itself. Years before she fined me, shamed me, threatened my home, and handed me a real estate acquisition card, she had been present when the exemption issue was identified. The HOA attorney requested preservation of all internal emails, text messages, meeting notes, enforcement instructions, developer communications, and records involving the acquisition company that had contacted me. Rachel had already prepared a written preservation demand. She handed it over before anyone could pretend the request was informal. By the end of the night, the hearing had stopped being about my garage door. It had become a review of whether Patricia had knowingly used incomplete documents to pressure an exempt homeowner into selling a key parcel. It had become a question of how many other original lot owners had been fined under rules they never signed on to. It had become a liability problem, an insurance problem, and a governance problem for the entire HOA. The county recorder's certified documents were later added to the official record. Outside counsel was brought in. The HOA's insurance carrier was notified. The management company opened an internal review, and several homeowners from lots 1 through 12 requested their own enforcement histories. Patricia left the clubhouse before the meeting fully ended. For once, nobody followed her for instructions. Nobody waited for her approval. Nobody treated her title like proof that she was right. I walked home under the streetlights with Rachel beside me, holding the same folder Patricia had once mocked as old paperwork. The difference was that old paperwork had survived every threat she made, and now it was pulling every hidden decision into the open. The first thing the HOA did was remove the $27,000 from my account. Not reduce it, not negotiate it, remove it. Rachel made sure the correction was in writing, signed by the board's attorney, and tied directly to the finding that Lot 7 was not subject to the 2016 architectural amendment without separate written consent. The lien threat was withdrawn. The violation history tied to my garage door, mailbox, pickup truck, fence, porch light, driveway crack, and exterior modernization was cleared from my record. The HOA also had to reimburse my county record fees, part of my attorney costs, and every administrative charge they had added while trying to make fake authority look official. But the bigger damage was not financial, it was exposure. Outside counsel reviewed Patricia's enforcement history and found that I had not been the only one. Several original lot homeowners had received notices under rules they may never have signed on to. Some had paid fines just to avoid trouble. One couple had replaced windows they could barely afford. Another homeowner had sold after months of pressure because she believed the HOA could bury her in liens. When that came out, the neighborhood changed. People who had once whispered about Patricia started speaking openly. They demanded full access to the recorded CC&Rs, amendment history, board minutes, and enforcement policies. The management company lost its contract after admitting it had processed too many violations without verifying the legal basis behind them. The board voted to suspend all architectural fines for original lots until every file could be reviewed by outside counsel. Patricia tried to defend herself at the next community meeting. She talked about protecting property values, modernizing the neighborhood, and keeping standards fair. But nobody wanted speeches anymore. They wanted documents, they wanted signatures. They wanted to know why pages had been missing, why exemptions had been ignored, and why a real estate acquisition card ended up inside my lien warning envelope. Then Rachel presented the email chain from Patricia's archived messages, the one outside counsel had forced the HOA to preserve. In it, Patricia referred to my home as the key parcel and wrote that once fines forced movement, the developer could close the block. That was the end of her presidency. The vote to remove her was not close. By the time she walked out of the clubhouse, she no longer looked powerful. She looked like someone who had spent years hiding behind rules and had finally met the part of the rules she could not control. The developer backed away from the project within the month, calling it a timing issue, but everyone knew the truth. The legal risk had become too public. I kept my house. I did not sell to the acquisition company. I did not let anyone pressure me into leaving. That spring, I repainted the porch railing, trimmed my mother's rose bushes, and replaced the old mailbox with one I chose myself, not because Patricia ordered it, but because I wanted the front of the house to look cared for again. I also bought a fireproof safe. Inside it, I keep my deed, the certified CC&Rs, the exemption clause, Rachel's letters, and the board's written correction. My mother had saved those papers once. Now it was my turn. Patricia thought she could force me out by making home feel more expensive than surrender. She thought old paperwork was useless, that missing pages would stay missing, and that a man coming home tired from night shifts would eventually break. But she forgot something. A house is not just walls, paint, and property value. Sometimes it is a promise someone fought their whole life to keep. And if someone tries to take that from you with threats that sound legal, Do not panic. Save every notice. Read every document. Get the certified copy. Find the clause they hope you never see. If this story reminded you of an HOA, a board member, or anyone who used a little authority to push ordinary people around, leave your thoughts, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories where homeowners fight back with evidence, patience, and the law. I did not beat Patricia by shouting across a meeting room. I beat her because my mother kept the truth in a folder, and I finally opened it.